One moment Earth's skies were clear. The next 7 enormous vessels hung in orbit, each larger than the largest human city. Their dark metal shells reflected no light, making them look like holes cut out of space itself. Admiral Zhao Li stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, Earth's flagship. At 53 years old, he had seen much in his career, but nothing like this. His weathered face remained calm even as his officers panicked around him. "Sir, they're not responding to any of our signals," said Communications Officer Park. Li nodded slowly. "Keep trying all frequencies and languages. They came here for a reason. They'll talk when they're ready." On screens across Earth, people watched the alien ships with a mixture of fear and wonder. In New York, crowds gathered in Times Square. In Beijing, families huddled around televisions. In Lagos, people filled the streets, looking up at the sky. Then, without warning, every screen on Earth changed. Every phone, television, and computer displayed the same image. A tall insect-like creature with 4 arms and a head that seemed too large for its body. Its skin was a pale blue and its 6 eyes glowed with an inner light. "People of Earth," the creature spoke in perfect English. "I am High Executor Vexmar of the Galactic Council. Your planet has been charted, evaluated, and claimed under Council. Law 5673B. You will now hear the Council's demands." In her small apartment in Geneva, Dr. Eleanor Reyes watched the broadcast with different eyes than most. As the leading expert in theoretical alien languages at the United Nations, she wasn't just listening to what this Vexmar was saying. She was studying how he said it. "Something's off," she whispered to herself, making quick notes. The aliens, mandibles twitched in patterns that didn't match the words. Was it possible they were nervous? On screen, Vexmar continued. "The Galactic Council rules over 8,000 star systems. For 12,000 years, we have brought order to chaos. Primitive species like yours benefit from our guidance and protection." Admiral Li watched from the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. "Record everything," he ordered. "Every detail matters now." As is standard protocol for newly discovered worlds, Vexmar announced, "Earth will provide tribute to demonstrate acceptance of Council. Authority, you will deliver 10% of your population for labor assignment throughout Council territories. Additionally, 30% of all natural resources will be harvested annually for Council use." Gasps and cries filled the air around the world. In the United Nations emergency session, representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate surrender to save lives. Others called for resistance at any cost. "You have 30 standard days to prepare your first tribute," Vexmar stated coldly. "Our ships will return to collect what is owed. Failure to comply will result in orbital bombardment of your major population centers until submission is achieved." The screens went black, then returned to their normal displays. In the hours that followed, chaos erupted. Stock markets crashed. Religious leaders called for prayer. Military forces worldwide went on high alert, even though everyone knew their weapons would be useless against ships of that size. At United Nations headquarters, Eleanor Reyes couldn't stop thinking about what she'd seen. While world leaders argued, she reviewed the broadcast again and again. There was something in the alien's eyes, a flicker when he mentioned Council authority, a hesitation when he said standard protocol. "They're not as united as they want us to believe," she muttered, circling a freeze frame of Vexmar's face. 3 days after the announcement, Admiral Li was summoned to an emergency meeting at the UN. The world's most powerful leaders sat around a table, faces drawn with exhaustion. "We have 3 options," the Secretary General said. "Surrender and give them what they want. Fight and die with dignity. Or try to run, though there's nowhere to hide." "There's a 4th option," said a voice from the back of the room. All heads turned to see Eleanor Reyes looking out of place among the politicians and military personnel. "Who are you?" demanded the Chinese president. "Dr. Eleanor Reyes, Xenolinguistics," Li answered before she could. "And we should listen to what she has to say." Eleanor stepped forward, placing her tablet on the table. "The Council isn't what it seems. Look at these communication patterns. Their language contains subtext that suggests internal conflict. I believe they're not a united front. but a coalition held together by mutual fear. What does that matter? Asked the Russian president. They still have the power to destroy us. It matters, Eleanor said firmly, because divided enemies can be turned against each other. Admiral Lee, you've studied military history. What happens when a superior force faces an inferior one? Lee smiled slightly. The superior force gets complacent. They follow standard procedures, expect standard responses. Exactly. Eleanor nodded. And what is the most dangerous enemy? The one you underestimate, Lee replied. Eleanor tapped her tablet, bringing up images of the alien ships. They expect either surrender or futile resistance. They've done this thousands of times to other species. But what if we give them something completely unexpected? The room fell silent. What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Reyes? Asked the U.S. president. Eleanor looked around the table. I need access to all our satellite data. I need the best engineers and programmers, and I need people who can keep secrets. You haven't answered the question, insisted the German chancellor. Eleanor's eyes met Admiral Lee's. He saw something there, a fierce intelligence and something else, determination. We give them the tribute they asked for, she said finally, but not the one they expect. Lee understood immediately. Trojan horse. Eleanor nodded. They think they're dealing with primitives. Let's show them how dangerous primitives can be when cornered. As the world leaders argued about this dangerous plan, outside the window, ordinary citizens gathered in the plaza. Some held signs begging for peace. Others demanded resistance. All looked up at the sky with fear. They had 27 days left to prepare humanity's response. 27 days to get ready for a fight they couldn't possibly win through conventional means. But as Admiral Lee watched Dr. Reyes outline her audacious plan, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They had given humanity time to think, time to plan, and humans were at their most dangerous when they had time to prepare. Council demanded tribute. Humanity's reply shocked the galaxy. Part 2. Understanding the enemy. 11 days had passed since the Council's demand. In a secret underground facility beneath Geneva, Dr. Eleanor Reyes hadn't slept more than 4 hours. A night. The room around her buzzed with activity. 50 of Earth's best minds worked at computers, analyzing data from previous Council encounters with other planets. The walls were covered with images of alien ships and strange symbols. Dr. Reyes, I found something, called out Aisha Mbeki, a young communications expert from Kenya. 3 years ago, a planet called Xeris received the same ultimatum we did. Eleanor rushed over. On Aisha's screen was a grainy video showing insect-like ships hovering over a purple sky. The footage had been captured by a deep space probe that humanity had launched decades ago. Can we see what happened to them? Eleanor asked. Aisha nodded grimly. The next footage shows the planet with massive burn marks visible from space. The room fell silent. This was what awaited Earth if they failed. Admiral Lee entered the room, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. Dr. Reyes, may I have a word? They stepped into a small office off the main room. The UN Security Council is getting nervous, Lee said. They want results, not theories. Eleanor rubbed her tired eyes. Tell them we've made a breakthrough. The Council isn't one unified government. It's 7 different species, each controlling different sectors of the galaxy. She pointed to her notes. Look at these communication patterns. When Vexmar speaks about Council authority, there are micro-expressions that suggest tension. They're not united. They're competing with each other. Lee studied the data, like a coalition held together by convenience rather than loyalty. Exactly, Eleanor said. And the tributes they collect, the people, they're not just for labor. They're bargaining chips between Council factions. Lee's eyes widened. So, humans would become currency in their political games. We need more time, Eleanor said. I believe there might be weaknesses we can exploit. Lee nodded. I'll handle the politicians. You find us a way out of this. Across the facility, in a different section, Sanjay Patel hunched over complex equipment, At 26, he was the youngest person in the facility, a brilliant engineer from Mumbai who had been developing communication technology before the aliens arrived. For days, he had been studying the brief transmissions detected between Council ships. Now his eyes widened as patterns emerged on his screen. "I can't believe it," he whispered. "They're using standardized protocols." He grabbed his tablet and ran through the halls, nearly colliding with Eleanor and Admiral Lee. "Dr. Reyes, Admiral, I found something huge," Sanjay gasped. "The Council ships, all their communication systems use the same basic code structure. It's standardized across their entire fleet." "Why is that important?" Lee asked. Sanjay's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Because standardized systems have standardized vulnerabilities. If we can find one weakness, it will work on all their ships." Eleanor looked at the young engineer with new respect. "How long to find such a weakness? With enough computing power? Maybe a week." "You have 4 days," Lee said firmly. That night, as most of the team rested, Eleanor discovered something else in them. Probe data. 3 smaller species that had been conquered by the Council had shown signs of resistance. Small acts of defiance quickly crushed. But they suggested that not everyone in Council space was content with their rule. "Potential allies," she murmured, marking the data for further study. The next morning, Eleanor gathered the core team. Admiral Lee, Sanjay, Aisha, and 5 others representing different fields of expertise. "We have 19 days left," she said. "And I believe I know how we can respond to the Council." She unveiled a multi-stage plan that made even the hardened military officers blink in surprise. "This is incredibly risky," said General Rodriguez from Brazil. "If any part fails, then we're no worse off than a direct refusal," Eleanor countered. "But if it works, we not only save Earth but potentially free others from Council control." "What do you call this plan?" asked Lee. Eleanor smiled grimly. "Operation Trojan Horse. We appear to give them what they want, only to change everything from within." The plan required perfect coordination. While the team worked on technical details, Admiral Lee engaged in elaborate diplomatic ceremonies with Council representatives who had landed in smaller ships. He kept them busy with questions about tribute procedures, appearing to cooperate fully. The aliens, never having faced meaningful resistance before, grew increasingly complacent. Their scans showed humans preparing transport ships for tribute collection. They detected no unusual military activity. What they couldn't detect was happening in secret facilities worldwide. Sanjay's breakthrough led to the development of microscopic nanites, tiny machines that could interface with Council technology. Every human volunteer selected for the tribute was injected with these nanites, hidden in their bloodstream. Meanwhile, Eleanor worked with linguistic experts to develop communication methods that Council monitoring systems wouldn't detect. The volunteers, mostly military personnel and scientists, learned these methods in secret. 14 days before the deadline, Admiral Lee addressed the United Nations. "I can confirm that Earth will comply with Council demands," he announced solemnly, as billions watched. "We have no choice but to provide the tribute they request." The statement caused outrage worldwide. People called Lee a traitor. Some countries threatened to break away and fight alone. But it was all part of the plan. Behind closed doors, world leaders implemented emergency protocols. Food and essential supplies were moved to secure locations. Military assets were hidden. And most importantly, the 10,000 volunteers, the first tribute group, completed their specialized training. 7 days before the deadline, Eleanor met with these volunteers. Men and women from every nation stood before her, their faces showing determination rather than fear. "You all understand the risks," she said. "Once aboard their ships, we'll have limited communication. You'll be on your own for much of the mission." A young woman stepped forward. "Will you be coming with us, Dr. Reyes?" Eleanor nodded. "I'll be on the lead ship. My background in xenolinguistics might help us communicate with potential allies among their conquered peoples." Admiral Lee joined her on the stage. "Remember your training, appear submissive. Learn everything you can about their technology and weaknesses. and wait for the signal. As the volunteers dispersed, Lee turned to Eleanor. Are you sure about going yourself? You're too valuable to risk. Eleanor's eyes were determined. This was my plan. I won't ask others to take risks I won't take myself. As night fell over Geneva, Eleanor looked up at the stars where council ships waited. In 3 days, the massive transport vessels would arrive to collect Earth's tribute. The aliens thought they were getting obedient slaves. Instead, they were about to receive something no council species had ever encountered: humanity at its most clever and most dangerous. The trap was set. Now they just had to spring it. The 30th day dawned clear and cold over Geneva. Massive council transport ships hung in the sky above major cities around the world: New York, Beijing, Mumbai, Lagos, and 17 others. Each ship was at least 2 kilometers long, with dark hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. In a staging area outside Geneva, 10,000 humans stood in orderly lines. They wore simple gray uniforms provided by the council, each marked with a barcode. To any observer, they looked afraid and defeated, but inside, each carried Sanjay's nanites and the determination to fight back. Dr. Eleanor Reyes stood at the front of the Geneva group. Her heart pounded, but her face remained calm. Next to her, Admiral Lee supervised the loading process. Remember, he whispered to her, 24 hours after you're aboard, we begin Phase 2. Eleanor nodded slightly. And Sanjay? Safely hidden with the backup team. If this fails, they'll have another chance. Above them, shuttlecraft descended from the massive transport ship. Insect-like guards with 4 arms emerged, each carrying weapons that glowed with blue energy. Their mandibles clicked as they inspected. The human tribute. Form lines and prepare for processing, one guard announced in a mechanical voice. Resistance will result in immediate termination. Eleanor stepped forward as the designated human representative. We comply with the council's demands, she said clearly. These 10,000 are the first tribute group as requested. The alien guard seemed almost disappointed by the lack of resistance. Council species were accustomed to new worlds fighting back, at least at first. The complete submission was unexpected. As the first humans were loaded onto shuttles, High Executor Vexmar himself appeared. The tall insectoid moved with graceful steps down the ramp of his personal craft. Admiral Lee, Vexmar clicked. Your cooperation is noted and appreciated. The Council rewards those who understand their place quickly. Lee bowed low, swallowing his pride. We seek only to survive, High Executor. Vexmar's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. A wise choice. Your species will serve many useful purposes within Council space. As Eleanor passed Vexmar to board a shuttle, she noticed something she hadn't seen in the broadcasts. A small device attached to the base of his neck, pulsing with faint light. She filed the observation away for later. Aboard the shuttles, humans sat silently as they ascended toward the massive ships. Some gripped hidden pendants or photos of loved ones. Others silently rehearsed their assignments. All understood they might never see Earth again if the plan failed. From his hidden bunker beneath the Alps, Sanjay Patel watched the transport ships through satellite feeds. Around him, screens showed similar scenes playing out worldwide as humans were loaded onto alien vessels. Begin tracking protocol, he instructed his team. Immediately, tiny dots appeared on a holographic display, representing each human tribute and their nanite signatures. Now we wait, he said quietly, aboard the main transport ship. Eleanor and the others were herded through processing chambers. Alien scanners passed over their bodies, checking for weapons but missing the microscopic nanites flowing through their bloodstreams. The Council's arrogance worked in humanity's favor. They didn't expect primitive humans to have technology, advanced enough to cause trouble. The humans were separated into groups and led to different sections of the ship. Eleanor memorized every turn, every door, building a mental map. Others did the same, each according to their training. From a command platform, Vexmar addressed the assembled humans in his section. You now belong to the Council. You will be transported to various worlds according to your assessed skills. Obedience brings comfort. Resistance brings pain. As if to demonstrate, a guard activated a control panel. A human man who had been moving too slowly suddenly dropped to his knees, clutching his head in agony. The other humans looked away, appearing cowed, but many made mental notes of the control panel's design. In orbit above Earth, resource extraction vessels positioned themselves over oceans, forests, and mineral-rich areas. Their massive collection tubes began to lower toward the surface. On all channels across Earth, Vexmar broadcast his message of merciful acceptance. People of Earth, his voice echoed worldwide. The Council accepts your tribute and welcomes Earth as the newest provider world in our domain. Your cooperation ensures your continued survival. The Council's mercy is great, but our justice is swift. Remember this as you prepare future tributes. What the Council forces didn't know was that beneath the apparent submission, Earth's remaining military forces were taking positions. Not to attack the overwhelming alien fleet, that would be suicide, but to prepare for Phase 2 of Operation Trojan Horse. 23 hours after boarding, Eleanor found herself in a small cell with 3 other women. One was Aisha Mbeki, the communications expert. They pretended to sleep while actually checking their nanite injections. Each felt a slight warming sensation as the nanites reached full activation. "It's time," Eleanor whispered, barely audible. Throughout the ship, other humans felt the same warmth spreading through their bodies. The nanites were now fully active, ready to interface with Council technology when touched by human hands. Back on Earth, Admiral Lee watched the clock. "Begin the countdown," he ordered. Global military forces synchronized their timers. In his Alpine bunker, Sanjay activated the nanite network. On his screens, thousands of tiny dots glowed brighter. "Network active," he reported via secure channel. "Operation Trojan Horse is a go," as Council ships began to disperse, preparing to leave Earth's orbit with their human cargo. Eleanor Reyes closed her eyes briefly. Everything depended on the next few hours. If they failed, humanity would become slaves. If they succeeded, the Council had existed for 12,000 years, dominating the galaxy without serious challenge, but they had never encountered humans before, never faced a species that refused to choose between surrender and hopeless resistance, a species that could find a third option where none seemed to exist. Eleanor opened her eyes and nodded to Aisha. It was time to show the galaxy why demanding tribute from humanity had been the Council's greatest mistake. As if on cue, the ship's lights flickered briefly. Somewhere, the first human had placed their nanite-infused hand on Council technology. The real plan had begun. Eleanor Reyes pressed her palm against the wall of her cell, feeling the strange, warm material. The nanites in her bloodstream connected with the ship's systems, sending information directly to her brain. It was disorienting at first, like suddenly gaining a new sense. "I can feel the ship," she whispered to Aisha. "It's alive somehow." Aisha nodded, her own hand touching a different section. "The environmental controls are accessible. I can adjust temperature, air composition." According to their plan, humans across the ship were doing the same, each accessing different systems, gathering information, preparing for the coordinated action to come. What none of them had expected was the voice that suddenly echoed in Eleanor's mind. "You are different." Eleanor froze. This wasn't part of the nanite programming, this was something else. "You touch the ship differently, not like Council masters." "Who are you?" Eleanor whispered. "We are the archivists. We maintain the knowledge banks." Through her nanite connection, Eleanor sensed a presence moving through the ship's systems, small, delicate minds that existed partly in the physical world and partly in the ship's network. In a restricted section of the mothership, Eleanor discovered a chamber she hadn't been meant to find. Inside were hundreds of small, translucent beings floating in gel-filled pods. Each was connected to the ship's systems by delicate filaments. Their bodies glowed with soft purple light, and their large, lidless eyes stared into nothingness. Another enslaved species, Eleanor realized. Through the nanite connection, she learned that the archivists were telepathic beings who served as living computers for the council. They maintained vast knowledge banks, but were treated as equipment rather than sentient beings. "We have waited," the voice continued in her mind. "For 12,000 years we have waited for ones who could hear us, ones who could help." Eleanor felt a flood of information, centuries of small acts of resistance. The archivists had been subtly corrupting council data, introducing tiny errors into their navigation systems, slowing their technological progress. But we are too few, too weak. We needed allies. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Lee launched the next phase of the plan. Earth's remaining military forces didn't attack the overwhelming council fleet. That would have been suicide. Instead, they targeted specific communication relays that the council had placed in orbit. "Focus fire on the designated coordinates," Lee ordered from his command center. "Precision is more important than power." Earth's missiles and energy weapons struck the relays with surgical precision. To the council, it would appear to be a futile, last gesture of resistance. Too little, too late to stop their departing ships. But destroying these relays wasn't meant to defeat the council. It was meant to isolate them from each other. Aboard the mothership, Eleanor shared her discovery with the other humans through their nanite network. "The archivists can help us," she told them. "They've been waiting for someone to free them." Across council space, as the first transport ships arrived at their destinations with human cargo, strange malfunctions began to occur. Life support systems recalibrated themselves. Security doors opened unexpectedly. Communication arrays transmitted garbled messages. The council species, never before challenged, didn't immediately recognize the pattern. They blamed equipment failures, cosmic radiation, or simple bad luck. In his alpine bunker, Sanjay Patel monitored the nanite network. Thousands of tiny lights on his display showed humans throughout council space, each one a point of disruption in the mighty alien empire. "It's working," he told his team. "Every human is a virus in their system now." The council's fatal mistake became clear. They had distributed their human tribute widely, placing them aboard ships, stations, and facilities throughout their territory. Now each of those locations had humans with nanite abilities inside them. But the plan faced its first major challenge when 4 council warships detected unusual activity and began scanning for its source. They traced it to the humans and prepared to eliminate them. This was where the second part of Admiral Lee's strategy came into play. As the council warships powered up their weapons, they received urgent distress calls from their own outposts, calls that appeared to come from different council species attacking each other. Confusion spread through the council fleet. Accusations flew between the 7 ruling species. Ancient suspicions resurfaced. What they didn't know was that the archivists, coordinating with Eleanor and the human nanite network, had fabricated these messages perfectly. The council has never truly trusted each other, Eleanor told her team as they worked from their cell. They've been waiting for betrayal for centuries. Through the archivists, Eleanor learned of 3 subjugated species that had been planning rebellion for generations. With careful coordination through the nanite network, humans made contact with these potential allies. One of these species, the Drevni, had infiltrated key positions throughout council space. Another, the Kazon, controlled much of the council's food production. The third, the Vox, maintained the council's vast database systems alongside the archivists. All had been waiting for an opportunity that had never come, until humans arrived. Back on Earth, Admiral Lee addressed the United Nations. "Phase 2 is complete. The council fleet is in disarray, their communications compromised. Now we move to Phase 3. "Will it bring our people home?" asked the Secretary General. Lee shook his head. "Not yet, but it will ensure they have a home to return to." Aboard the mothership, Eleanor worked with the archivists to access the council's central communications hub. What they discovered shocked even her. "The 7 council species have been manipulating each other for millennia," she told Aisha. "Each one thinks they're in control, but they're all being played against each other." The archivist showed her records that had been hidden for thousands of years, evidence of how each council species had been secretly working to undermine the others. never realizing they were all trapped in the same cycle of mistrust. "This is why we waited," the archivist voice explained in her mind. "Not just for warriors or rebels. We waited for those who could understand." Eleanor smiled. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't military might or even clever technology. It was the ability to build bridges, to form alliances, to find common ground even with completely alien minds. As council ships throughout the galaxy continued to experience unexplained malfunctions, the 7 ruling species turned on each other, each suspecting betrayal from their ancient allies. The stage was set for the final phase of humanity's plan, not a military victory, which was impossible against such advanced foes, but something far more powerful. A diplomatic revolution that would reshape the galaxy. Eleanor Reyes, once a simple xenolinguistic specialist, now stood at the center of the greatest rebellion the galaxy had ever seen. And it had all started because the Council had demanded tribute from the wrong species. The Council's central hub was a massive space station that dwarfed even their largest warships. Located at the heart of Council territory, it had been the seat of power for 12,000 years. No rebellion had ever reached this far. No enemy had ever breached its defenses. Until now. Eleanor Reyes stood on the observation deck of a small transport vessel approaching the hub. After 3 days of careful planning with the archivists, she had managed to transfer herself and a small team to this ship bound for the central station. To the council crew, they were simply part of the human tribute assigned to menial work. "Are you sure about this?" asked Aisha, who stood beside her. "If they discover who you are." Eleanor nodded. "For the plan to work, someone has to be there, in person. The nanite network has limits." Through the view screen, they watched as the central hub grew larger. It was a beautiful structure despite its dark purpose. A spiral of gleaming metal with delicate spires extending outward like crystal formations. Meanwhile, across council space, the carefully orchestrated confusion was reaching its peak. Council, ships fired warning shots at each other. Diplomatic channels were filled with accusations and threats. The 7 ruling species, who had maintained an uneasy peace for millennia, were on the brink of open conflict. On Earth, Admiral Lee monitored the situation from his command center. Sanjay Patel sat beside him, tracking the nanite network that now extended throughout Council territory. "It's time for the final phase," Lee said, his face grim but determined. "Send the message." Sanjay nodded and transmitted a code sequence through the nanite network. Throughout Council space, humans received the signal. Those aboard ships activated specific programs they had secretly installed in Council systems. Those on planets or stations prepared for coordinated action. Aboard the central hub, Eleanor felt the signal through her nanite connection. "It's happening," she whispered to her team. "Remember your assignments." As their transport docked with the station, Eleanor connected with the local archivists. There were hundreds of them here, maintaining the vast knowledge banks that were the true source of Council power. "We are ready," the voices whispered in her mind. "The truth has been prepared." Eleanor and her team were led to their quarters by insect-like guards who barely glanced at them. Humans were considered too primitive to be a threat here at the heart of the mighty Council. That night, as most of the station slept, Eleanor slipped away from her quarters. Using the station maps provided by the archivists, she navigated through maintenance tunnels toward the central communication hub. 2 guards stood at the entrance. Eleanor didn't try to fight them. That would have been suicide. Instead, she pressed her palm against a nearby wall panel. The nanites in her blood interfaced with the station systems, and suddenly the guards' communication devices buzzed with an urgent alert from another section. "Security breach in Sector 7, the devices reported in the Council language. The guards hurried away, leaving the entrance unguarded for precious minutes. Inside the communication hub, Eleanor found what she was looking for: a crystal sphere floating in the center of the room, glowing with soft blue light. This was the central archive, the heart of all Council knowledge and communication. "Are you there?" she whispered. "We are here," came the reply from the archivists connected to the system. "The evidence is ready." 12,000 years of deception, gathered and prepared. Eleanor placed both hands on the control panel. Her nanites connected with the system, and she felt the strange sensation of her consciousness expanding into the station's network. At that exact moment, across council space, Admiral Lee's plan reached its climax. Earth forces launched a series of precise strikes at key council communication relays. These weren't meant to destroy the council fleet, just to create a momentary gap in their network, a window of opportunity. In that brief window, Eleanor and the archivists acted. The central archive's blue glow turned purple as the archivist took control. Then, throughout council space on every communication channel, display screen, and neural interface, the truth began to appear. Records that had been hidden for millennia streamed to every ship, station, and planet. Each council species saw evidence of how the others had manipulated them. Secret agreements, broken promises, planned betrayals, all exposed in an instant. The Quill species saw how the Voltar had sabotaged their colony ship centuries ago. The Mrekti learned that their sacred religious texts had been altered by the Jexan. The Sovraks discovered that their genetic degradation wasn't natural, but induced by Thelan scientists. Each revelation was more damaging than the last, unraveling 12,000 years of carefully maintained alliances. But Eleanor didn't stop there. As the 7 ruling species reeled from these revelations, she broadcast a different message to the subjugated worlds and the millions of tribute workers from dozens of species. The Council is not unified. They have lied to you and to each other. They are not gods. They are not invincible. They are simply bullies who have gone unchallenged for too long. From the Earth Command Center, Admiral Lee sent the final part of the message: humanity's true tribute to the galaxy. We propose a new galactic charter, not based on subjugation, but alliance. Not on tribute, but trade. Not on fear, but mutual defense. Any species that wishes to join us will be welcomed as equals. On 3 key council worlds, the subjugated species who had been waiting for this moment launched their own rebellions. The Drevni disabled planetary defense systems. The Kazan halted food shipments to military installations. The Vox unlocked security protocols that had kept billions imprisoned. On the central hub, Eleanor felt a presence behind her. She turned to see High Executor Vexmar, his insect-like form towering over her, weapon raised. "You," he hissed. "What have you done?" Eleanor stood her ground, unafraid. "We've done what you never expected from primitives. We've thought beyond simple resistance." Vexmar's mandibles clicked in fury. "You've destroyed 12,000 years of order." "No," Eleanor replied calmly. "We've ended 12,000 years of tyranny." Vexmar aimed his weapon, but before he could fire, something strange happened. The device at the base of his neck, the one Eleanor had noticed during their first meeting, suddenly pulsed with purple light. The archivists had taken control of it. Vexmar froze, his limbs locked in place. From the nearby console, a holographic image appeared, a small, translucent archivist with large, expressive eyes. "We have maintained your knowledge for millennia," the archivist said in a clear voice that everyone on the station could hear. "We have watched your cruelty. It ends today." Throughout council space, the balance of power shifted in a matter of hours. 3 of the council species, realizing they had been manipulated by the others, broke away to negotiate with Earth. The remaining 4 prepared a punitive strike against humanity, only to find their weapon systems compromised by the combined efforts of human nanite tech and archivist data manipulation. For the first time in 12,000 years, the mighty council faced something they had never truly understood: mercy from those they had planned to enslave.